You're listening to BQ Assimilate the Audio.
Hello, listeners and viewers. My name is Davey, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Fly. This is the exclusive limited run series by BQN, where each week we are recapping the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery's final season. Each week we gather here with a panel of BQN hosts and Patreon subscribers who here on YouTube or Facebook Live, or you could be watching the recap, also as an audio podcast as well. And guess what? We want you to be a part of the show. So if you are watching live and you're in the chat, please engage, please chat with us. We want to hear your thoughts on the episode as well. And if you are a BQN Patreon subscriber, a paid Patreon subscriber for as little as $1 to $2 a month, you can actually be on the show as well. So we send out an invite before the show begins to all of our Patreon members and offer them to be on the panel, which is really, really good value. So if you want to be on a future episode and you are not yet a Patreon subscriber, head over to patreon.com/BQN and sign up. We'd love to have you on the show. And there's a ton of other perks that you get for being a Patreon subscriber as well. All right, we're up to episode 5 of Star Trek Discovery's final season. It's the episode Mirrors. I've got some very excited panelists waiting in the wings who are... They were bursting at the seams to discuss this episode. I had to try and stop them from getting all their thoughts out before we went live. So I'm going to bring them all in now. Returning as always, we've got Amy, we've got JJ, we've got Peter, we've got Jim, and coming back, hasn't been with us since episode 1, but it's returned because he just has so much he wants to say on this episode. It's Jonathan. Hey, everyone. Good to see you all. Everyone's ready to chat through this. I'm going to dive straight into initial reactions for this one because by this point, I think we all know how we're watching the show, so I'm not really going to do how did you do your first watch. I'm going to drive straight into initial reactions, and I'm going to go to JJ. Give us your initial reactions of Mirrors.
So I thought it was really exciting. I liked it a lot. It kind of made me feel like traditional Trek in a way. So it was very enjoyable for me.
Traditional Trek. Amy, did you feel that traditional Trek vibe as well?
I'm sorry, did you say Amy?
I did, yes.
Okay, good. I did, and I loved seeing the Enterprise ISS. That was really fun. I enjoyed the episode. I got a lot of story and character building and world building, as we were talking about before you started us. I know, and you shut us down. Wait, save it for the Let's Fly. No, this was an enjoyable episode. I really liked it.
That's good to hear. There was certainly a lot happening in it. Jim, what about you? What have been your initial thoughts coming off this episode?
I lost my thought. I did like the episode, although I will admit I was wrong about the Mullen Lock thing. We can go into that later, though. But I did like seeing the mirror universe and tying that into the 32nd century and tying that into the 32nd century. And I did enjoy finally seeing some backstory on Mullen Lock. Like, did it really have to take half the season for us to get an episode about delving into their backstory?
Yeah, I mean, and we got a lot of their backstory straight up. What maybe in a longer season might have been spread out over a few flashbacks over a
Yeah,
few episodes is
yeah.
just kind of
Instead, it's
yeah.
3 intense short flashbacks. It's interspersed throughout the episode,
Mm-hmm.
and on top of that, we finally learned stuff about the Breen we've never known anywhere ever before in the history of Trek. And I think I posted this. I think I posted this in the Discord. We learned more about that species as a whole in this one episode than we have in every combined appearance of the Breen previous to this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which I'm not mad about, quite frankly.
No, neither am
I'm not
I.
mad about it. I've always wanted to know more. Jonathan, I know
Yeah, no,
you.
I'm not mad about it either. I love it actually.
Jonathan, I know you've got some strong thoughts on this. What are you? Because you watched the previous week Face the Strange and this one back to back, so you had a bit of catching up to do. So share with us how you're feeling about it.
Yeah, so I was not a huge fan of this episode. There were things that they did in this episode that made it more like traditional Trek that I did like. So there are aspects that I did like and had to stick along with what I expected more of traditional Trek. So like they start off with, a personal log, right? How many Star Trek episodes start off as a captain's log? I loved that, little part there. The finding out about more background of the Breen was really great. In fact, when I first saw the Breen, I go, yes, these are some badass looking Breen. This is exactly what I expect them to look like, for this timeline. The background of the Kelleron, loved getting to hear that. But there were some like really bad forced jokes that they threw into the episode. The whole Maul and Locke relationship, I think, is screwed up and toxic. It's like two sociopaths in a weird situation, it's a bonding. Like neither one of them are good for each other and they're each better off alone, but they make each other worse in a way. So like I did not love that. And then, finding out about like Maul's backstory, like, okay, so you grew up without your father there and like then your mother died. Like that doesn't get to excuse like you becoming a thief/murderer. Like I don't feel bad for you at all. At all. I have no sympathy for those two characters. And the way that they did the Breen face reveal, I felt was a little bit of a letdown. We find out that he is Breen before they did the facing. I would have preferred that's how we got to see Breen for the first time. We hear Araga and, Michael Burnham, who knows absolutely everything from all timelines, like, oh, yes, so you're Breen.
It does make sense.
We know about, who doesn't know about Araga? Yeah. So like that I did not love, but like the other things that were more traditional Trek, like the getting to know each other, the little Kelleron, the Ballad of Kroll. I loved all of that.
Yes. Okay. There is.
So yeah, there's some love and hate. I mean, this is Discovery, right? If you're going to be honest, there's got to be a little bit of both.
No, I'm Jonathan. I'm actually with you more than you might think. I've watched this episode twice, and I'm in a very similar boat. There are parts of it I really love, and there are parts of it which I think were either just missed opportunities or not executed as well as some other parts of it were. Mm-hmm. Peter, what about you?
Well, serve it without a gram of Ossicod, Peter.
I was meaning to write that down.
Okay. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was an odd episode. I think it's kind of similar to some of your reactions. I mean, there were parts I enjoyed. It was just a very busy episode, or there was so many different things going on, with maybe like 3 or 4 or maybe 5, different threads that was going throughout the episode, that at least I had a little bit of a problem trying to sort of keep up and sort of where we're at and, where did we left off this arc before. So, I mean, I enjoyed the background with the Breen. I know we talked about this last week or in previous weeks. So I was kind of happy that we got more information about them, especially since they're a race that just hasn't been, really deeply explored. So we can learn a little bit more. Then we had Commander Rayner and, his adjustment to the crew. It's kind of, I mean, I kind of like those types of episodes. Reminded me of, Spock from the Galileo 7 or, Data from when he was captain of the Sutherland, and I forgot, maybe Redemption or one of those, one of the cliffhangers. So it's kind of a getting adjusted and with a new crew, and realizing they're working on the same team. So I enjoyed that part, and seeing the Enterprise was good as well. Although I guess I wish, I know that it was maybe a bit of a budget saver, just like using existing sets, but I hope they could have maybe incorporated the story a little bit more. But it was nice seeing them. So I mean, things to see, a lot of things to follow.
Oh, good. Oh, good. It broke up a little bit there, Peter, but I think we got most of your thoughts, which is good. So look, let's sort of step through the episode then and see if we can complete the picture for ourselves. A lot of us were saying before we went live that the last 2 weeks, the episodes have moved really, really quickly, and you blink and you miss things. In fact, actually, before we begin, I want to go to you quickly, Amy. You're on that side of me. So last week, you had only done one watch of Face the Strange, and you were hoping that maybe subsequent rewatches may enhance your appreciation of it. I just wanted to check in with you. Face the Strange, how are you feeling after having watched it more than once?
Yes, and having multiple discussion on Let's Fly and talking about it on our little recap on All Good Things, and then doing a big discussion on Union Federation. Now I can say, yes, I very much enjoyed the episode.
I was going to make that a segment. I was going to has Amy changed her mind? You could have said no. It's perfect. There are plenty of people who do not like Face the Strange, but that's fine. So
I know one of Amy's criticisms from the last episode was fixed in this one about them not walking to the ready room and walking. So there's everyone's walking. No one uses their instant transporters this time.
Mm-hmm.
Tilly does.
They just didn't want to pay for the transporter effects this episode.
Yeah. There is a bit at the end actually on that point where I made a note about it. So Stamets and Adira come out of that ready room or briefing room, whatever it is, and Tilly beams in. And I'm pretty sure that they were all in there together working on the same problem. There's going to be one instant beaming thing that annoys me each episode. Okay, so the episode, someone mentioned the personal log at the beginning of the episode, very tricky. So it opens with a personal log by Book, which I don't actually think we've ever heard Book recording a personal log before, which was interesting. And then whilst he's kind of got his little personal log montage going on, he's comparing pictures of Mole with what I'm assuming is her as a young girl. I'll start with you, JJ. Where do we think the whole Book and Mole thing is building to? Is it going to be something really obvious, like, he's going to be the one to save her? Or, we learned how jaded she is about her past and her father in this. Like, is there no coming back for Mole? What do you think?
So I kind of thought that this was going to be something traditional type of, she's going to be seeing the light and he's going to rescue her type thing. But after Locke got injured and they took off in the episode towards the end, I'm not sure what we're going to see. I don't know if she's going to trust them or anything. I really did think Book did give it his all to try to get her to stand down and move forward and trust the Federation. And I do think that, it would be in both their benefits to be locked up in a Federation prison versus out there with a bounty on their heads. But I don't know. At first I thought, yeah, she's just going to turn around and it's going to be all of them. But now I'm not sure.
Amy, last week you were talking about how much you love them as a couple. And we've had a lot of debate back and forth around, is this a real loving couple or is there some real toxic manipulation going on here? We learnt this episode that they're that relationship between Mol and Locke is really intense. Like really, especially from Locke's side, like he would rather die than be separated from her in a Federation prison. Do we still, I don't know, have you started to sort of swing more towards the toxic relationship side, or are you still holding fast that this is the galaxy's greatest love story ever told?
I want it to be the greatest love story. And you see that it's both sided and their passion is real. But then to what Jonathan's point, what he was saying earlier, like, yeah, these people are crazy. And having that much dependency on another person, in my opinion, is not healthy. So there is something there, but I know that it's not one-sided. I think that it is mutual and they are mutually destroying themselves. But I think that they are going to work together and they will come to the glowing light that is Starfleet.
Interesting. I mean, and Jonathan, I know you've got some strong thoughts on this too, and I'm kind of I think I'm in your camp a little bit on this, Jonathan. When you look at how their relationship came to be, I felt she did manipulate him a little bit. There's a little bit of like she kind of came in there and was, pulling at his heartstrings a little bit, and then he turned against his uncle for her in a way, and he knew straight away that what that would result in, because they mentioned the name of that blood feud to each other. So just how toxic do you think this relationship is, Jonathan?
I think it's terrible for them. I think it's terrible for all of Breen. I think it's terrible for the galaxy. Yeah. So, I mean, she starts off, right? So, like, her whole argument of why she needs money doesn't even make sense to me. She's like, there's this magical place in the Gamma Quadrant that my daddy told me about when I was a little girl, and everyone lives in happiness and peace. And I'm just like, thinking, you mean like Earth, Risa, Vulcan, like most of the planets? I understand, this is post-burn, pre-Discovery showing up and handing out, dilithium like it's candy on Halloween. But like, there are plenty of good places in the Alpha Quadrant, and she only ends up getting into a situation where she can't go to these Federation planets because she decides to become a criminal. So she starts off doing minor petty thing like, cutting the dilithium, right? People can get past that, but then like quickly wants to, move on into being associated with murder. And, we see her poisoning that guy with like the piece of latinum, right? So I don't feel like any kind of sympathy for her. I feel like she is out for herself when she is told like, oh, go, come with me, I love you. I don't know that I fully buy it. I think she needs like a partner that she can help and control, right? It almost felt like an episode of Criminal Minds in a way, with you got like the master sociopath and then like the sub sociopath that's like kind of going around, the one that can be talked to and manipulated out of the situation to be told like, hey, no, you didn't really want any of this. And then the guy is told Eriga after he shoots the two people. We don't know if he kills them. I assume that he killed them. And then the third one, the word Eriga said before he fires a shot, and she says, why didn't you kill him? He raised me. Okay. So he's already saying like, you're going to be hunted to the death now for not having killed her. The phrase was, there's only one path to redemption, and then gets handed the gun. And he thinks like, oh, well, they're going to forgive me if I turn over this other weapon. No, they're not. Like, no, they're not. Like, and you being in a Federation prison, I don't think is going to make you safe either. So like, I'm not really understanding like their motivation. I'm not buying their love. I do not like them as villains overall.
Okay. Jim, I felt that we learnt that Locke is actually an intensely loyal individual through a lot of his actions, especially even though he shot down his uncle for Mol, knowing what that would result in, he still couldn't kill him because he raised him. And obviously he has an intense loyalty to Mol. Do you think maybe she is taking advantage of that loyalty for some greater good? Does she have another motivation that's not financial that we don't know about yet, maybe?
That I'm not sure about, but I do think she is definitely taking advantage of him. I also think on some deep, dark, twisted level, she does have feelings for him too. So unlike my prediction last week, last week when I said she had no feelings of any kind, I think she does have feelings for him. It's just of a different kind than what he clearly has for her, which is he is completely and totally infatuated with her to the point he will do anything she says at the snap of a finger.
Mm. Yeah, literally anything she says. So let's move ahead in the story a little bit now. So we see a wormhole. I felt a very DS9-ish looking wormhole. I'm
That thing
getting
gave me the motion picture vibes.
Yeah, there was some of that too. Definitely some of that. Because it wasn't quite a traditional wormhole. Like, it wasn't really going anywhere. There's lots of little references to DS9. You know, we've had the Breen. We've mentioned the Dominion War. You know, we keep seeing that progenitor who looks like a founder.
Raynor himself is a reference to DS9.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I don't know. I'm vibing some kind of DS9 connection, and I got that from seeing the wormhole, which I felt looked very Gamma Quadrant DS9 wormhole in its aesthetic. Amy, are you kind of getting those DS9 vibes as well, or have you picked up other references along the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
No, I'm not, obviously.
Could be just me. Could just be me. One thing I did really like at the beginning of this scene was the fact that Raynor pulls Michael aside and says, "Hey, I'm your first officer, and I think this is too dangerous a mission for the captain to go on." I personally loved seeing that from a first officer again. That was like Riker first officer vibes.
I even got Chakotay vibes from that too a little bit.
Yeah, but Chakotay always let Janeway go on the away missions. It hasn't really been a first officer since
That's true,
Riker.
but I do remember sometimes where he would like object to the point of like physically stopping her though.
Yeah, he would. I mean, their relationship was always a lot more strained in how they kind of went about that. JJ, how did you find this? Did you feel that Raynor kind of gave in too easily to Michael, or was this a good opportunity for Raynor to shine in command?
I think this was an opportunity for. I don't. So ultimately, no, I don't think he gave in too easily to Burnham. Right. I think that this was an opportunity for him to continue to grow his relationship with the rest of the crew and grow that connection. And I thought they did a good job of showing that actually in this episode. And it was, but I don't think he gave up too easily. I think he pushed enough to say, hey, you really shouldn't be going. And she justified the reason why she felt he needed to be on the bridge. And in the end, totally get why, right? Like, So.
But then we have Michael and Book off on another away mission together. It's always Mike. I don't know. Jonathan, does it feel the same to you? Like it's always Michael and Book, or is that just me?
Well, yes, but that's because it is always Michael and Book. I wrote down, Captain wouldn't be going like away on this, shouldn't be going on this away mission, but of course she would in this situation because it's Book. And I think the same would have been like if it was a different captain, if they had a personal connection with the person who's, integral to getting the mission done, they're going to go along. That being said, we have got a lot of Michael and Book together. And she says, that there were still some surprises. They're talking about joking whether or not like what happened and wasn't it fun getting to know what's going to happen when you were going through all these different timelines. She said, oh, well, there's still some surprises, alluding to the fact that like the surprise is that she finds out she's still really in love with him.
Yeah. There's I feel like
I think that's I think that's what this whole scene's about. Is like her starting to want to admit that to herself.
I think it's a very predictable they'll kind of end up together again kind of thing. I personally just wish that they could learn to have a post-relationship friendship and that kind of see that happen, but I feel that it'll probably be more satisfying for the writers to bring
I
that.
wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this season we end up seeing Cleveland Booker the fourth, the first one that came before him.
Yeah.
Seem to be leading up to that. And this ends with Michael being pregnant. It would not surprise me. They talked a lot about, creation, the progenitors, and they keep hinting about new life. It would not surprise me to find out that she or another main character is pregnant at the end of the show.
Amy, how are you feeling about the Michael and Book dynamic at this point?
Well, as I said, need them to be together. And the little back and forth and the little like, oh, are we going to talk about it? Yes, we are, just a little bit. And then, oh, we have to, go save the world. Life calls. I get that. And this image, yeah, when she smiles, oh my gosh, and she does that, close her lips, it just says it all. I am all for having them get back together. And then can I just bring up one thing that just really threw me out of it both times as watching? So they see this and they're like, "Oh, can we communicate?" No, we can't communicate. The logical next step would be, "Oh, let's send in a probe and see if we can communicate with what's on the other side." Oh, we don't have to, spare anyone's life, risk anyone's life. We can see, oh, are we going to get ambushed by what's on the other side? The fact that they didn't even pretend to send a probe and just went straight to sending your two main characters really irked me.
I think that's the action-orientated nature of Discovery, the cinematic vibe it goes for, is where you get writing where decisions aren't necessarily based in sort of what the characters would do scientifically and sensibly. It's more like, no, let's throw them right into danger because that's what Michael and Book like to do.
Yeah.
There was a cuteness to this scene as well. There was a liner that I liked, because the whole episode was peppered with these sayings, like different sayings and turn of phrases from different cultures. Book says one here. I can't quite remember what it was. And Michael's reaction is just very like, I'm sorry, what? Like no, catchy. Catchy.
It's an old Quajon saying, never return from a hunt without enough bait for a carrion reaver.
That's right.
Yep.
Catchy.
Yeah.
And then her smile.
That's catchy.
Yeah,
So I thought that was one of the good jokes that they did, but that came right after I felt like one of the jokes that they tried to do that flopped. Like the line was, "Ship feels good, purring like grudge when she's killed something." And that just so was off that it took me out of the moment. I'm like, what is this cat in space killing? Like this doesn't make any sense. But the joke after I thought was perfect. I love the old Quajon saying. I think that's going to be a line that if Lower Decks had more seasons, I'd guarantee that it would appear in there. I don't know that it will with us getting only, the 2 additional seasons, but maybe.
JJ, do you ship Michael and Book, or how are you feeling about them at this point?
I still think they're going to end up together, right? This is just, it's to be expected, right? At this point, I'd be surprised if they don't end up together. But Jonathan made me think, maybe at the end of this, I wonder if they're able to, depending on the progenitor's tech, if they're able to somehow bring Book's world back. That would be interesting. So
I hadn't actually thought about that. Interesting. Jim, would you be up for it if that was the case? If they found a way to bring back Book's world?
They would have to tread that very, very finely edged sword extremely carefully, because if they go about it the wrong way, oh boy, would it be pandemonium in the fandom.
It's almost, well, I mean, that's going to mean that the progenitor's tech is pretty much the Genesis device in a way.
Yeah, exactly my point. Like, if they do it right, it'll be perfect chef's kiss. But if they do it wrong, oh my god! Oh my god! The criticisms will never end.
Mm-hmm.
I think Stamets like kind of insinuated it, right? Because he said in a previous episode that he could even bring back the dead. So
And Culper talks a lot sort of towards the end about spirituality and coming back from the dead, and yeah, we'll have to unpack that all a little bit later as well, because that was an
I'm
interesting.
suddenly seeing. I'm suddenly seeing if they bring back Quajon Culber. Culber establishing a residence there.
Mm-hmm. So we get into the weird wormhole, and it's the Enterprise. So the ISS Enterprise, which should have had more of an impact for me than it did. I was like, oh, that's cool. I mean, I was like, it's nice, it's exciting, but I don't feel like they did enough with this story around the ISS Enterprise arriving in our universe. It seemed like they were trying to tie up the whole like Kirk, Spock, ISS Enterprise, and how Spock sort of changed the mirror universe, not necessarily for the better in the Terran's case, or maybe for the better in the Terran's case. But I want to get everyone else's thoughts and feelings on seeing the Enterprise in the Strange New World sets, and I'll start with you, Amy.
Yeah, I saw the bridge and you hear the, original sounds of the bridge, and it's like the warm blanket, but I can absolutely understand what you're saying, Davey. And I wonder if it's because we've had so many callbacks to the original with Strange New Worlds, with Lower Decks and their crossover. Like, we're getting so much original series. And I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying now when we see it, okay, it's old hats. I don't know.
There's been a few little moments in season 5 which have called back to the fact that this crew is from that era.
Mm-hmm.
Season 4 should have went away from that altogether. They were very well established in this new century. And there's lots of little reminders that kind of take us back to that point in time. JJ, was this as close to a Strange New Worlds Discovery crossover as we're ever possibly going to get?
I think so. Yeah. I think that, I was actually like thinking back, like after watching this episode and seeing the ISS, and then when they said that Saru was on the passenger list, that, oh, maybe this was a missed opportunity for Saru's character to be reprised here somehow. I don't know. But yeah, I kind of agree that, kind of seeing a little too much, it didn't have its impact, but it was still enjoyable.
Yeah. I was really hoping that we would get, I don't know, maybe like a cameo from Spock, from even Pecker's Spock, or even the guy who plays Kirk in Strange as well, whose name I've temporarily forgotten.
Paul Wesley.
Paul Wesley, that's right. Yeah, so maybe even just to find out a little bit more about what happened to them. Instead, it was Dr. Cho. Jonathan, is Dr. Cho someone we've met before?
I'm not familiar with that person, and I think that's like you're all saying the same thing and touching around. I think what's kind of missing is you feel like it should be this moment and this scene, and you should have these feelings, but you don't, because you don't have anything that fully ties it together. The only thing that indicates that this is the mirror universe ship is that it says ISS, and then they added a couple badges on the background. Right, we don't have it even like if we could have had something very simple like a painting, right, of one of these people as a commander or something in the background that would have like added on to the story, that would have tied in somebody, or like a prop that they had been left over from a battle or something. We don't get to see any of the folks from that time. The one mention of Saru, I thought, okay, oh, we're going to get to see, an image or something of him. No, we're not. We may end up, as a result, getting to see Mirror Saru in an episode of Strange New Worlds. That's now apparently like on the table, since we know that there's one in that timeline. But I feel like they tried to do so much in this episode and ended up leaving a lot on the table. And I felt they could have either cut out some of the stuff that wasn't necessary, or this is a streaming episode. Like, there's not a time limit. If you want to make a 90-minute episode, go ahead. Like, Star Trek fans are going to sit through it. They don't need to like focus on like trying to hold down our attention every moment. They do so many of these episodes starting off as if it's like a movie or the very first episode of a TV show. They're like, we got to do something crazy, flashy to get their attention in the first 5 minutes to hold them here. And that way they'll sit through and watch the full episode. Like, we don't need that as Star Trek fans.
No,
that's
right.
not, I mean, we like the explosions, don't get me wrong. That's fine. But like, we're really there for the story.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really good point. And I've seen some other reactions to this around the internet, and a lot of people are just sort of gone, cool, but a little bit of a missed opportunity in how poignant this could potentially have been, given the rich story of the Mirror Universe from the original series in Enterprise all the way through DS9 and in early Discovery as well.
And then the only thing I'll hold my reservation on is that, so now they have pulled this ship out, and in the Ready Room episode, or at the very end of this episode, there's a mention that Detmer and Awoshi-kun are going to be sent to send this ship to like the reserve thing. So I don't know if that means that there's going to come back to this, as they hinted like the Breen the whole time, and that went over our heads. So maybe that's what's happening here. Or is this just going to be their way of excusing not having those two characters in the episode? Because when we saw Raynor on the bridge, and at the first time, there's a whole bunch of people walking around. I see Stamets walking. I'm like, this is a very busy bridge. And they go to the front and they're about to start the meeting. And I'm like, do they not have a meeting room? But then it makes sense why they're doing right there, because like the view screen is so they can see the wormhole and everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where.
Well, here's where I was going to go with this, is that on that bridge, we see a whole bunch of people. They're like, who are these folks? And one of the people says, what is that? And my immediate response is like, who are you? Though they do make up for this in a way by the end of the episode. All these people on the bridge, some of whose names we don't even know, you actually get to hear them speak. So I love that. They're like making up for what they needed to do more earlier on in the show, but they're doing it again. They're throwing new people at us. So like, I don't know who your names are. At least they're getting lines though. So we're getting to hear what they sound like.
Yeah, this picture I've just brought up, I think, is probably what all our faces looked like when the credits started rolling on this episode, from the sounds of some of the discussions that we're having. And you're right, though. We are getting a lot of just swapping and changing of characters. We haven't seen Saru for 2 episodes now, which is really upsetting, because Saru is one of my favorite characters of Discovery, and his screen time in this final season is not great. And then I want to know, was there something going on behind the scenes, which means we seem to have this A crew and B bridge crew thing going on? Because now there's just 2 more people sitting up at the front of the ship who I wish I was going to get to know more about. But I'm probably not. Jim, before we kind of move on, did you have any thoughts that you want to share that we haven't kind of covered yet around seeing the Enterprise and...
Oh, I have thoughts on the Enterprise, that's for sure. Like, I agree. It was exciting seeing it, and we briefly touched on them not touching everything story-wise, but like, I would have loved to have seen mention of like, what happened to Mirror Sulu? What happened to Mirror anyone else from the original crew after the original contact was made? Stuff like that, because this is clearly their ship, and clearly some kind of insurrection, mutiny, whatever term you want to use, was instigated. Did those crew members just happily go, oh, here's the ship, bye, we'll go to the escape pods? No, they didn't. They would have fought back, and I would have liked to have at least heard or seen a mention of something about like what their final fates would have been.
Yeah, they just kind of all disappeared and settled into society in our universe. And I didn't quite pick up on what time they arrived in our universe either. I'm guessing
Yeah,
it must have been
yeah,
in the
exactly. Like
21st century, I'm
yeah,
guessing.
because like they didn't even mention any other Enterprise crew members. I don't think they mentioned any Enterprise crew members except for maybe Spock when Burnham was looking wistfully at the science station behind her. And I also did like the fact that they got to blow the crap out of the Strange New Worlds then, which I bet they probably enjoyed thoroughly doing.
Oh yeah, they were blowing it up. They had when Locke and Michael were fighting in the sickbay, they went crashing through those glass windows. Yeah, they really
Yeah,
messed
my
that
main
up.
thought was that like, oh boy, and Benga would be mad right now.
Peter is in the chat, and for listeners and viewers who Peter was with us at the start of the show, but is unfortunately having some internet issues, and so is just joining in the conversation in the chat, has mentioned as well that he would have really liked to have seen maybe a captain's log with Pike or Kirk. He's also mentioned as well on the subject of Owo and Detmar that we're probably not going to see a lot of them again.
Oh, and that's another thing I'm not even going to go into. Like, they weren't even in this episode yet. Somehow they're given the ISS Enterprise to fly back at the end of the episode as a reason for why they're not going to possibly be in more episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Ah!
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and because they mentioned that I think they were flying the Enterprise back to space dock or something like that at the end. So maybe
at the end of an episode they weren't in to explain why they're not going to be in other episodes. Like, seriously, just pay them some money and put them in for like one scene minimum. Like, make the fans happy. We want our Detmer and Owo.
Yeah, there's something that'll come out in a behind the scenes special once this season is over around why we haven't seen too much of them for sure. So let's move on a little bit then to meeting Mull and Locke and the holographic shootout in the sick bay. So this is where things really sort of started to move along. We started to learn more about these characters. I felt a very exciting scene with this shootout. A lot of these physical action sequences are often really well executed in Discovery. JJ, I'll go to you first. How did you find, and we've already touched on it a little bit already, but how did you find this whole very quick unveiling of who Locke is or what Locke is and their relationship and their motivations? I mean, because we've only got 10 episodes, so we were served a lot of information and a lot of exposition very, very quickly. How did you find the execution of this?
So I appreciate it, but it could have been done a little bit more fanfare, I would say. I don't know. It just seemed it was like, number one, I didn't realize that Locke was Breen, right? So I did appreciate finding that out. But the way they revealed it, I was like, it was kind of like a letdown, I feel. But I do enjoy this scene. I enjoy the joke that they had, that Mull and Locke say when they came in shooting and they're like, well, you're horrible shooters, you missed the targets. So I did enjoy that section. And I did enjoy getting to know the background story. It was a lot all at once for this single episode. So a little overwhelming.
Amy, did you find the reveal of the Breen and seeing their faces for the first time satisfying?
Yeah, I don't know much about the Breen and the history, but I guess apparently neither do a lot of people. So I'm in for it. I loved this scene and all the holograms. It gave me Star Trek Beyond with the holograms. Remember Jayla and like them and the bicycle and him doing all that, and it just the way that well, if you're watching on the YouTube, you can see. Oh my gosh, I just sounded old. The YouTube.
On the YouTube. You crazy kids in your internets.
But the image that's up there has that same the bluish tint that was in Beyond, when they were. So I was getting that excitement with it. It really did amp it up, and I love their story, and I'm hoping that book does get through to her. But it was exciting. I liked how they got paired off because I liked Locke and Burnham. I like their conversations too.
Mm. There were some moments here that I think were some of the more well executed moments in the episode with the bait and switch that was kind of happening, even though, and Jonathan and I were kind of talking about this before the show, the bait and switch with the decoy and the locket and all that kind of stuff. I didn't quite pick up on that on the first and second watch through. Do you think, Jonathan, that sometimes really key plot points are kind of just rushed over very, very quickly?
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to point out with this scene, and even with the last scene, is I don't think Discovery as a show gets to benefit from Discovery having been a show. And what I mean by that is in building Discovery set and realizing what works, doesn't work, they took all of that and then used that for Strange New Worlds. And the Strange New Worlds set, like the lighting alone, you can do a million things that appears with the lighting in both the sickbay and on the bridge that, you've already got 90% of your battle scene already taken care of. And then you can throw your actors into a more like simulated experience as opposed to, what we've seen on other Star Treks. And so I feel like they haven't really got to fully benefit from those types of things because they had to like learn the hard way, where the newer Star Trek shows had this, we did this in Discovery, we knew that this worked, we didn't knew that this didn't work. We see it also, I think, like with the AR wall, only more recently in some of the episodes do I feel like Discovery has been able to fully utilize that in a way that like Disney was doing early on, like the sand chasing racing scene, like that was done with the AR wall. The Breen planet is the background. I thought that, was well done. So I'm glad to see them like using that technology more. But to this point, again, I feel like there's someone said at the beginning of this season, like, we are way over budget, rewrite some of your episodes. I need you to figure out how to cut your budget in half or something because of the reusing of the sets, not having some of the actors on there. And then these story points that like, you don't need to spend that much more time on it. I mean, I think we would have all loved the ISS, been more nostalgic about it if we had like heard an old comm log or an old video log that was even 30 seconds long. So, this is not TV where they needed to cut this for commercial and cut it down to fit a time slot. They had plenty of time. They could have made this a longer episode. The only thing that makes any sense to me is budgeting and knowing that they ended the show without, having told the actors. That seems to be where this has gone. And I just feel bad for them because like, I don't understand how they could be having these issues. I understand Star Trek is in theory always going to be a very expensive show because it's taking place in the future. But once you have your sets and now that you've got the AR wall, I mean, you're talking about bringing in some additional actors and makeup. The makeup artists are experts. We see them, be able to transform anybody in around, and they're not bringing in, very high name actors that are going to be costing them a lot of money. So I do feel like it was rushed, and I feel like it's coming back down to someone at the higher up saying, no, you got to make this go quicker. We got to keep it going. And I don't know if it's that they don't understand Star Trek fans or there is just, very tight purse strings.
Might be a little of both.
I think so too. I think Discovery's always been very experimental in that regards. I think they tried to do one thing and then they've tried to bring it back a little bit to satisfy the fans, but then they've always been wanting to experiment with doing their own thing and be their own show. And I wonder if it'll just be far more appreciated once it's kind of off the air and everyone's kind of moved on, and it'll have its renaissance further on down the track, like some of the other shows have.
And plus, haven't the networks always had a kind of a love-hate relationship with Star Trek based on what they want and what Star Trek wants and or needs?
Paramount's never really figured out how to monetize Star Trek appropriately. They tried to do it with what, they thought was going to be the easy way, doing movies, and some of the movies were a hit, but again, I think they don't really understand like Star Trek fans. So when they try to go and monetize certain things, like it was, the same thing they do for other shows. Like you can get a Star Trek ball cap, which, is fine. And many people do have multiple of those, but it's not really all that different than like what CBS has for a Survivor ball cap. So they haven't like focused on these things where I could see that they, like the pride pins, right? JJ's making these wonderful pride pins. Why would you not have like Paramount taking that up, even though they understand their fan base, right? When they do Star Trek Day, they even have a drag performer, so they understand and talk about inclusion and diversity. But they've really never fully understood, I think, the appropriate way on how to market it and make it more profitable for at least their perspective.
Jim, I'll throw to you on the Breen, because you were sort of saying a lot at the beginning of the episode. We learnt so much about the Breen that we more in an hour than we have in years of knowing that the Breen even exist.
Yeah, because I think prior to this, all we knew about the Breen was they participated in the Dominion War. Prior to that, they were an enemy of the Dominion, and I think it was they had no blood, and that might be about it.
Yeah, and do you think is there more to the Breen storyline than just Locke is a Breen with an Erigar blood
I think
bounty on him?
I think even if there isn't, there should be. And I might add, I did like the redesign here. Like they finally got rid of that stupid snout, which I never thought looked good to begin with.
I always thought that helmet, and I think I've mentioned it on Let's Fly before, it looks like something from Star Wars. It looks exactly, almost like...
I think someone commented in the Discord that the Breen got sued by Star Wars. That's why they didn't have the snout anymore.
Yeah. Do you think then, Jim, that maybe the Breen are aware of the Progenitor's tech, perhaps? And that's why Mol and Locke are like, okay, if we get this, then they'll let us go and we can love each other forever in the Gamma Quadrant.
I don't think they're aware of it, no.
Okay. Yeah, but
although you never know. There is the running theory that the Progenitors are the founders, and the Breen were part of the Dominion during the Dominion Wars, though.
Well, we did get this unfortunate bit of CGI, and we learned that they had two faces, apparently.
Yeah, that confused me. Like, two faces? Huh? That part, that's the one part I didn't understand. Like, how can you have two faces you can choose from? Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah, well, the Primarch kind of refers to... There's a line at the end where Locke is using, like, apparently it's the old face, and this glowy thing is the new face? And he's like, why are you using that old face? Like, we have this new look. So there's some kind of evolution that has happened with the Breen. Do you think, Amy, we might be learning more about that? What are your thoughts about what's actually going on with the Breen and these two faces and all this kind of stuff?
Wow, I did not even pick up on that. I thought it was his face reacting to the atmosphere. So that's what was changing into what we see now. And so I thought his two faces were the helmet and then what we see. Interesting.
That's an interesting approach, Amy. That gives me new thoughts on that.
This is literally why I watched the episode 3 times. Because of the whole two faces thing. So I'm like, I missed something. I'll watch it again and I'll pick up on it. It doesn't really make sense. They don't make it very clear. As you're saying, it does sound like some sort of evolutionary thing. So it's not clear. Like, is this a recent evolution that, for example, has happened in the past 900 years? Or is this something that like the Breen have always been, always have had the two faces? And then the face thing, where it breaks down for me, like it makes even less sense, is so the older face is like the relaxed that they say is, rigid and weak, but this newer face looks like it's floaty, see-through, and very vulnerable, and almost why you need to wear like protection. Like you can see the dude's brain. So that doesn't seem to be more advanced to me, like, to be more, scary or threatening if you're making yourself like ghost-like and vulnerable, but maybe that makes them stronger. I don't know. The whole Two-Face thing really did not make sense to me. For me, it again felt like, oh, hey, we want to do this and have them look like this. And they were told, yeah, we don't have the budget for that. So figure something else out. And they decided to do, all right, well, they got two faces because they couldn't afford to keep the actor looking like this the entire time. It just did not make any sense. And I don't think we're going to get an explanation of why they have two faces. I think we'll hear a little bit more about the Breen. I do think it's interesting that like our character is, part of royalty. I think that may, play something into this because they talk about how there's various like factional wars. So maybe, he'll have a faction of Breen towards his side, but it was not satisfying. I did like that, we get to see a Breen face, and I thought that was cool. I would have, preferred they stick with one or the other, or as Amy said, this be something that they have like as a reaction. Because that was my first thought too, is like, all right, this is going to be something, that's why they have the helmet. But no, this is apparently a face that they can choose to have.
So I wrote down an exchange between the Primarch and Locke, which I think sort of puts some of it into context a little bit. So the Primarch says, we have the genetic code of the Yot-Thot, whatever that is, but then says to Locke that wearing that face, as in the face he wears all the time, is an insult to his heritage. And he says, this is Breen. And then Locke says, then why can we change? We have moved past the need for that form. So there's, I don't know, I feel like that something has happened in the last 800 years with the Breen. Maybe this is something that goes back centuries and centuries with the Breen, but I'm wondering if there is I don't know. To me, this just screams there's a deeper link to the story with the Breen, and we're going to learn more about them. Possibly.
I hope so. I mean, I would like to get more of that backstory.
Let's move on to, okay, so we've had all the action. They've triggered the power surge, which Mol was able to do just by sticking a finger underneath the helm, which apparently blew up the whole bridge. But
Mol was a little hasty there.
It's just like, hey, I'm going to cause a power surge, which is just going to fix everything we've been trying to do for the last hour. But sure. So that's all happened, and the shuttle that Book and Michael arrived on flies off. So they need to get the Enterprise out. Then we go back to Discovery. And we get a really interesting moment of Raynar in command, working with his crew, listening to his crew. There's a very Star Trek kind of thing where, all right, almost Picard-like, right? All right, options. Let's listen to everyone.
Although Picard never bribed his crew with alcohol, though.
True.
Didn't he, though? Wasn't there always a bottle of Chateau Picard on the table?
JJ, how did you?
Touche, Amy, touche.
JJ, how did you enjoy this scene as much as I did? Where I love a good Star Trek prop, where the bridge crew is all solving a problem with technobabble, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. But how did you find this scene?
So this is a scene that really made me feel like this was traditional Trek, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody gelling, everybody working together to solve the problem. Getting past their differences and their frustrations and getting the job done, right? But this was the scene that hit home to me, that made me have those nostalgic feelings of Trek. And so it made me warm and happy inside. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And it was pretty good to sort of see Raynar just in command, and to actually see that, actually his style of command, whilst was kind of confusing at first, actually seems to make a lot of sense. There were some interesting lines in this. There was a joke that kind of came right at the end, and I wonder if this is one of the ones that Jonathan you thought was bad or not, where they bounce around each other with a particular solution, and then Adira says something along the lines of like, right, we just have to fire in a hexagonal pattern. And Randall's like, why hexagonal? And Stamets goes, who cares? It'll work. Did you pick up on
No,
that?
I like that. And I thought that was actually like a callback to earlier on in the episode where, Raynar says something effective like, I don't need to know how the cake is boiled, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need all the details. It's like just figure it out. And so like for him to throw that back at him, I thought that was well done. I love this scene for the same reason JJ did. I thought it was classic Trek. I mean, you hadn't seen other captains do it quite like this, but you could easily picture almost any of the captains throwing out like a similar kind of thing, like if it was Sisko, hey, whoever gets this figured out gets dinner made by me, or, whatever, but they do everything together as a crew. And I thought it was brilliantly done. I love to see that, everyone got to speak. I do wish we, again, got names for those two people up front who we don't know still. But I love that scene. I thought it was well done, even making it so we get a little bit more of the background of the Kellerun. So we got to find out about the Kellerun's, poetry, so their culture. We got to find out about their desserts with their boiled cakes. And we get to find out about their alcohol with the citrus cast, which I'm assuming is some sort of like a cider, right?
I thought it was citrus mash.
It was citrus mash. And
Citrus
what
mash.
I want to know is, how good is that citrus mash that caused everyone to get that excited to figure out the solution?
Well, it's not synthahol, so I apparently non-synthahol is hard to come by, or at least precious.
You'd be surprised how the offer of like a free bottle of wine or something would motivate me, Jim. So I kind of get it.
Well, knowing you, Davey, that doesn't surprise me.
All right, okay. None of the alcoholic Australian jokes, please. So, Amy, I wonder what is you've got thoughts. You've got thoughts. I'll let you go.
Yeah. I loved this scene, and you're right, JJ. It took me right back, nostalgia Trek, and for me, it was total TNG. And what I loved about it that I felt was very reminiscent to TNG was that their characters gave their suggestions with a background of their expertise, which I absolutely love. And that's why it reminded me of TNG, where it's like, oh, well, of course, Worf is going to recommend, let's go in blazing, how he always does. Or, of course, Riker's going to be the let's go in guns blazing, because he's similar to Worf. But I mean, they each had their own flavor, and they did that here. Like Reese gave his mention that was sort of communications-y. Like it was very familiar, and it was, again, a little formulaic because it's like, yeah, Rayner had difficulties and now everyone's vibing, and Burnham, I know you can do it. Like, yes, we know you can do it, but it does get done, and it gets done well.
Absolutely. I wonder if maybe they're building up to, maybe Rayner's going to take over the Discovery Command or something. I have a feeling that Michael is not going to be in command of Discovery by the time the show's finished, in whatever that's going to mean. So yeah, it was a good sort of very satisfying payoff. And then we bring the ship out. There was a very interesting moment when, and this confused me a little bit because I was like, how did Book know about this? Because Book turns to Michael and says, hit it? And she's like, no, too weird. Let's just fly. So I'm guessing at some point when they were couriers together that Michael would be like, yes, this is what Captain Pike used to say. At some point, she's told him about that. There's also we need to touch on the moment here, which they always seem to manage to do in Discovery. Big crisis, life or death moment. I need to tell you my feelings about something, and that is that I saw you in the time jumps, and we were happy, and it was nice. Was that a little forced? JJ, what did you think of that? I found it a little cringe, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So it was very predictable to me that she was going to say something like that in that moment. But I feel like it was also cringy because I don't know. I just felt like the way they could have delivered that, the way that it could have been acted out,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't hit the mark for me. It didn't have that magical feeling to get you excited that, oh, they're getting back together. Look, it's starting to happen. But it still makes me think that they are still transitioning that way. It's just, I don't know, it just didn't quite feel right. It was very cringy. I don't know how else to describe it.
Mm. And then we also kind of got the Full House moment, where there's a lesson to learn with each clue. What did we learn this week, gang?
Mm-hmm.
Jim, do you think those lessons are intentional, or that's just what the crew are choosing to take from it? Because there has been a little odd theme, some stronger than others, I might add. Like,
I think that's just what the crew is taking from it.
Yeah. Because in Janal, the theme of connection was really, really strong. And I can't even remember what the theme was for this one. Jonathan,
I didn't think there was a theme, but
No.
that's just me.
Because Jonathan, I don't know if you
I'm
picked
not
up on
sure
that
what
in
the
your-
theme was supposed to be in this one,
Yeah.
but I do think the theme is somewhat intentional, considering that this is based off the chase, right? So when the program was put together, which that's one of the things that frustrates me, is that they're constantly looking at a still, like they would be watching the video on repeat, okay? Not just looking at the one individual still of the progenitor. But when the video gets played, the progenitor says that this was set up so that it was be on different planets, so that the only way that you'd be able to put this together is that you'd be forced to work together. And so I think the scientists who found the technology and left it behind did set it up to, set up another test to make sure that you were worthy enough to pull the sword from the stone, so to speak.
Hey, I have a question talking about all of that in the clue, and I feel we've got a smart group of people who can answer it. So when they said there were a couple of intentional verbiage, like when they changed the view screen so that they could see the opening and closing of this wormhole, and they were describing it that it was made most likely from the burn. So that means that Romulan from the 24th century hid it in something that happened way later. Like, that didn't make sense to me. And then also, if you can answer, when they got on the ISS Enterprise, Burnham specifically said when they saw the children thing and she picked up that little stuffed animal, and she said, why would they want us to see this? Who is they, and who's staging leaving this stuffed animal? Can you answer me those two questions?
Well, I think the burn thing was just a coincidental thing that happened after hiding the thing. I think they hit it on the ISS thing because people might be afraid to go near it. That's my opinion, though.
I think the wormhole existed, but the burn did do some kind of damage to it, which is why it was the aperture was opening and closing like that.
Oh, okay.
But you raised, even as you were asking that question, a thought entered my head around the whole timeline of it. Because I thought the ISS Enterprise obviously would have arrived in the 23rd century, but it can't have if Dr. Cho was on board the Enterprise as a refugee, went and had a career in Starfleet, found their part of the puzzle, and then decided to go back and hide it in the ISS Enterprise, which was stuck in this weird little bit of antimatter-matter clashing space.
Right.
Is anyone else's head hurt as much as mine right now?
Yes.
Well, so the scientist Dr. Cho has to be from the 23rd century and appeared back in the 23rd, and then yes, weirdly gone and hid here. One of my issues was that they said like, oh, what a perfect hiding place. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, this is a terrible hiding place. And then as far as the like stuff inside the ship, I had an issue with that because now it's supposed to have been what, like 900 years, right, have passed that this thing has been sitting there. So all that stuff would have
Great shape.
like, there should have been some degradation, we should have seen on there. And yes, Amy, that line made no sense at all. Like, who left this here for? Like, that wasn't left and displayed for you, honey. Like, they were, they were living in the hallways for some reason, which also doesn't make sense because the ship has rooms. So like if they took over the ship, why are they living in the hallways in the transporter pad? Why are they not using the rooms on the ship? So that's maybe why she's like, who left it for us like this? Why did they not use the room? That made no sense. I think this again was tight budget, and they said, here are the sets you have, work with it.
Mm-hmm. David O'Shea in the chat is with us on the hurting heads. David, I'm glad we're not alone. And yeah, that's like I said at the beginning, for everything they did well in this episode, they did two things a little sloppy. And the more you reflect on it, the more you're like, oh, this doesn't really add up, and I'm having to suspend disbelief just a little bit too much in this season. Hey, here we are.
And Peter writes in the chat, yes, I didn't really understand the whole Dr. Cho part of the episode. Like, Janeway thinks about time travel gives me a headache.
Yep. And Star Trek loves to give us a headache with time travel. The last thing I want to end on is, thoughts around what's going to happen next with the Enterprise, because you sort of see it flying off. Apparently, Owo and Detmer were flying it back to the Federation or something like that. Are we going to? Is the Enterprise going to play? Amy, do you think we'll see the Enterprise again, or is it just kind of it was just a nice little moment?
I hope it was just a nice little moment, but I've always been the one where it's like, I don't stop bringing in these new characters. Like, I'm one of those, and I still to this day, why did we need Spock and Pike in season 2 of Discovery? So let's let it be nice and let's move on.
What do we think happens next? So we're midway through the season now. We've got 5 episodes to go. JJ, where do you think we go from here?
Well, there's something that I noticed in, I guess, the last couple episodes is that there's been some discussion about spirituality and religion.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a brief scene today in this episode where, Tilly and Colbert are talking, and she says, well, that was very spiritual. And his response was, I didn't say that. I didn't say it was spiritual, right? But there's been this like undercutting about some spirituality. So I don't know, that I think is foreshadowing something about the progenitors. And I'm kind of like worried where that's going to go, because I'm hoping that it's not going to be that, some sort of spiritual religion around the progenitors or whatever. I don't know. That doesn't appeal to me, but I am interested to see where it goes. So that's what I'm trying to look forward to see what happens with and see how they tie this up, because it's been a couple episodes now that they've made mention to this, and I'm really curious.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a purely scientific answer to this. I feel that there's going to be there'll be a bit of a greater unknowns of the universe kind of vibe. Jim, I'll go to you next. Where do you think we're going to from here, especially in context of, what JJ just brought up, which there's a foreshadowing in this little scene between Tilly and Culper, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I think they're definitely gonna go back on that point with Culver again.
Mm-hmm. And Jonathan, how about you?
Yeah, they're going to do something spiritually related. I don't know what it is. If I, could, hope and wish, I'd like them to, show Bajor, right? That would be your allusion to a very spiritual planet. And we haven't seen what that planet looks like in 900 years. So be curious to see what's going on there.
They've mentioned it a couple of times. It'd be nice to see it again. You're right.
Right? They also mentioned Beta Z, which I would like to, hear more about that, especially since how things went with, what was it, the Dominion War, right? And then the Dominion War, we found out that the Dominion were able to attack Beta Z, right? They quickly took over. So what are the lasting implications of that? Have they fully recovered? I don't know, but I'm here for the ride. I hope that they do not feel constrained by time and money, but clearly that's always going to be the case. So excited to see what's going to end up happening. I too am a little fearful where it could go religious, but Star Trek's usually been pretty good about that. I think the closest thing they've come to like a god, all of their characters were clearly shown to be like fallible alien species, with Q being the most obvious example, right?
Mhm.
There's not just one god, there's multiple Q, and they all make different decisions and are completely fallible individuals as well. So I hope we're not going to lead to a point where like Culber's going to go through an ascension like that character in Lower Decks did.
Yeah, I'm sure he and the Great Koala would have a great time together.
Yes.
Oh my
So
god!
I don't know
Imagine.
where it's going. I am a little scared, but they've been pretty good about not treading too close to that edge, I feel.
I know there's a lot of I've heard there's a lot of theories out there about, hey, is Michael going to become a prophet or something along those lines? I would. I don't know if I would be entirely mad if it was a link to Lower Decks and the Great Koala. I feel like that'd be just them giving the finger to everyone and saying, "Look, there you go. There's your ending. I hope you're happy." And Amy, we'll end with you. Where to from here?
Yeah, I too want to see a little bit more Beta Z. We all know why. I definitely still need to see the connection. Maul's going to get one over and realize, she's doing weird things first. I don't know. The ends never justify, or the means never, that one. Which one is it?
The ends never
The
don't
ends
justify,
don't justify
the
the
means.
means.
Yeah.
You were right the first
So,
time.
yeah, and so it was brought up with the latinum, with it being laced with that poison, but that guy was a jerk. Like, had it been a character that we knew and love, it like Kira, it would have been fine. Like, they justify it. It's all spun. So her and Locke have not done anything beyond redemption in my book. And that's what said, Burnham said, Starfleet is about second chances. So I think that's what this episode's theme was.
Interesting. Well, I think we've still got a bit of a ride ahead of us. So that's it for today's recap. Thank you so much to everyone here on the panel, and to the few people we had. We had David O'Shea and Peter joining along in the chat as well. So thank you. Before we wrap up, let's just jump around and see where we can find you all online. And I will start with Amy.
Well, you can hear me on the most recent episode of What's the Tea, Bev. Had the honor of being on Christos's show. That was fun. You can hear me on All Good Things. You can hear me on Union Federation each and every week. And I am in our Discord. That's my new favorite place. And I am on Facebook at our BQN Collective.
Thank you. And surprise, Jim. Where can everyone find you?
Well, I am in the Facebook group, mostly as a lurker. I am active in the Discord chat, and that's about it.
Thank you. And Jonathan?
You can find me on Facebook. I'm listed as Jonathan Michael Snow.
Amazing. And JJ?
You can find me on Facebook and on my website, jenadiah.com.
And for me, you can find my show here on the BQN, both my shows, the Trexperts Quiz, We will have a new episode coming out tomorrow with the team from the Captain's Quadrant podcast. You can also find my other show, which has just dropped a new episode, The Bargain Bin Gamer, spelled Gaymer, where I play the cheapest and shittest video games so that you don't have to. Remember that we are here doing Let's Fly each and every single week. You can join us live in the chat if you do happen to catch us live on YouTube or Facebook. And I will remind you, if you become a Patreon subscriber, you only have to sign up at the low level, patreon.com/BQN. You will get an invite to be here on the panel. Not just a mention of your name, but you actually get to be on the show. That's pretty good value for a Patreon perk, I like to think anyway. We will be back again covering episode 6 of Discovery. Hope to see you again soon. Until then, live long and prosper, everyone.